Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Um, you have joined us for the 2024 Local Partnership Program Guidelines Development Workshop number 2. I hope you all can hear me. If you have a reaction button, go ahead and give us a thumbs up. If you don't have a reaction button and you're wondering what's going on, go ahead and send us a comment in the Q&A. My name is Lashara Ward, and let's go ahead and get started with this workshop. Next slide, please. So we're going to start with some introductions and welcome you all here. I'm really glad that you're all joining us today. This is our second workshop for the local partnership program for this next funding cycle, which for the formulaic is funding cycle 5, and for the competitive is cycle 4. Next slide, please. So like I said, I am Lashara Ward, and I am the program manager for the local partnership program. And I also have some colleagues here with me today. So Benjamin, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. My name is Benjamin Williams. I'm a program analyst with the local partnership program here at the CTC.
And Matthew, I believe that you are here.
Yeah, thanks, Lashara, and good afternoon, everybody. I'm Matthew Yozgat. I'm the deputy for SB1 programming at the commission.
Okay, next slide, please. Ben, you're on mute.
Thanks, Lashara. Didn't want to get too far into that while still muted. So, thank you, everyone. We welcome comments and questions as part of each item at this workshop. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as early into the item as you can to give the system time to acknowledge you. Alternatively, you may use the Q&A tab to submit your comments and/or questions. Please specify the time or topic you are commenting on. Commission staff will read the questions or comments on your behalf. Clearly state your name and organization at the start of your comment. Each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as they are registered to a specific attendee and can create confusion for staff when providing comments. This presentation is being recorded, and the recording, as well as the PowerPoint presentation, will be made available after we're done here today. Thank you. Next slide, please.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and just talk about what we're going to talk about. Next slide, please. So our agenda for today, we're going to start out with doing a recap of workshop number 1, which we did host last month. And we had some lively discussion, and I'm hoping we can have some more discussion again today. And then we're gonna separate the formulaic from the competitive. The local partnership program has 2 sides to it, and it can be confusing. And so we want to separate those discussions and try to avoid confusion as much as possible. And then we'll talk about the office hours. Some of you have already been participating in, and some of you have yet to sign up. So we'll talk about that and what we're going to talk about for future workshops. And then we'll go ahead and close out and talk about next steps. Next slide, please. Okay, so we wanted to take a few moments to recap some of the highlights that we took from our first workshop in February. And we are going to start with a brief overview of the program for those of you that may be new to the local partnership program. For some of you, this may be a repeat, but for a lot of people, it will be brand new. The local partnership program, or LPP as we call it, is available to local agencies that have approved fees or taxes dedicated solely to transportation improvement projects, or that have imposed fees, like a uniform developer fee, for example, that is dedicated solely to transportation improvements. The LPP was created with the intention of balancing the need to direct increased revenue to the state's highest transportation needs, while fairly distributing the economic impact of increased funding. In other words, the Commission wanted to support and help to fund both large and small transportation infrastructure projects that were also leveraging local funds. Please keep in mind that all transportation infrastructure projects are eligible for this program, as are bus, passenger rail, and light rail replacements. Next slide, please. The LPP receives $200 million a year, which is split between the formulaic and the competitive programs. Of those funds, $20 million is set aside as incentive for newly eligible agencies, and the remaining $180 million is split, with 60% being distributed to eligible agencies by formula and the remaining 40% being awarded through the competitive process. A one-time incentive funding will be provided to jurisdictions that seek and receive voter approval of new or renewed tax measures, tolls, or fees. If those tax measures, tolls, or fees have a minimum period of 10 years and are dedicated solely to transportation, and for sales taxes are equal to or greater than 1/4 cent. This $20 million per year comes off the top before it's split between the formulaic and competitive programs. The amount of incentive funding will be based on the projected annual revenue of the voter-approved tax, toll, or fee initiative, with a minimum of $200,000 and a maximum of $5 million. For all program cycles, we combine multiple years of funding. So for the 2022 program and both the competitive formulaic program, we combined 2 years of funding. And the competitive program had $144 million to award, and the formulaic program had $216 million to distribute. And that is going to be the same for this next cycle for the 2024 program as well. Next slide, please.
Now we'll just go over the eligibility for the local partnership program. So for the formulaic program, eligible agencies are those that have sought and received voter approval of taxes, tolls, or fees that are dedicated solely to transportation improvements. The agency must also administer those funds to be eligible for LPP formulaic. For the competitive program, the revenue could also be from a voter-approved tax, toll, or fee, but alternatively, it could be generated from an imposed fee, like a uniform developer fee, for example. So long as the revenue generated is dedicated solely to transportation, projects and agencies will be eligible for the competitive program. For eligibility criteria, we have two approaches. For the formulaic program, the project nominations are accepted throughout the program cycle, and we screen the nomination packages for eligibility and completeness on an ongoing basis as eligible agencies submit program applicants. For the competitive program, however, project nominations are submitted by the deadline and go through an extensive review process. For this past cycle, we focused on 10 different criteria, including accessibility, air quality, community engagement, among other criteria listed here. Next slide, please.
Okay, so for the 2024 program, we're following the same basic schedule as the last funding cycle. The 2024 program is a 2-year cycle, and we anticipate having draft guidelines ready for adoption in August of this year, followed by an immediate call for projects. At this time, we anticipate the applications will be due in late November or early December, and for the competitive program, the staff recommendation will be released in late spring of 2025 and the program adopted in June of 2025. The formulaic program does not need to go through the extensive application evaluation process that the competitive program does. So when the guidelines are adopted in August of this year, we will also release the funding distribution. And agencies then have the opportunity to submit project nominations in November for the initial program adoption in January of 2025. Agencies do have more time to program their projects in the formulaic, so the funds will not be lost if a project is not programmed with the initial program of projects. And that timeline will be included in the guidelines when that's released. Next slide, please. Okay, so for this workshop and for the future workshops, as we're going through the guidelines, this is just the basic outline of what that looks like. Agendas are posted up to 10 days before each workshop. Presentations and recordings will be posted after each workshop, and staff will make recommendations based on the discussion and feedback. And so that's what we're getting into next. And previously covered topics may not be readdressed at subsequent workshops unless we determine that it is necessary. Okay. Oh, I see we might have one question.
We
go ahead?
do.
Yeah, go ahead.
The questions, do you have a link or a list on the CTC's website to check and see if we're an eligible taxing authority?
So if you want to find out if your agency is eligible, go to our 2022 guidelines, and there's a list of what you need to submit in order to get an eligibility verification check. I do recommend that you do that in advance before you spend a lot of time preparing your application. And you can always call me if you have any questions. Okay, next slide, please.
So here we'll just go over a bit of recap on the first workshop we held. And at the first workshop, we had 104 viewers, of whom 65% were from local jurisdictions, 25% were from Caltrans, and 10% of attendees represented private individuals and businesses. And at the first workshop, several topics were discussed, among which the most notable were, number one, whether a percentage of LPPC funds should be expended in jurisdictions with certified housing elements. And for LPP competitive, pro-housing is no more important an evaluation criteria than others, but the more evaluation criteria an agency has fulfilled and the more engagement an agency does, the more competitive the application. The second major topics discussed was the role of Justice 40 in the local partnership program. And the CTC is currently evaluating Justice 40's applicability with the local partnership program. Next, the levels of engagement and outreach that CTC is looking for with the local partnership program was discussed. And we invite feedback from stakeholders about the current requirements for public engagement. And we welcome any input that our stakeholders hold of how public engagement can be brought forward in the formulaic program. And for the competitive program, we are looking for robust engagement to show that projects are not only approved of by the public, but actively wanted by the public. And finally, we discussed the differences between the local partnership, formulaic, and competitive programs at the first workshop. And next slide, please. And one slide back. Thank you. At the first LPP workshop, we received the following feedback from stakeholders. First, the general consensus was that no set-asides of funding should be created for the local partnership, competitive, or formulaic programs. Second, we heard from stakeholders that there should be documents submitted to show public engagement for the formulaic program, but there should also be a flexibility in the type of documentation that should be submitted when submitting a nomination packet for the LPP formulaic. So the general consensus amongst stakeholders, and we invite further stakeholder feedback, is that documents do not need to be extensive, but should show that the public has been engaged by the nominating agency to some degree on a project. And third, we received feedback that the current maximum award of $25 million for the local partnership competitive program is a fair maximum award. And we invite all feedback or any advice or any desires on agency's part for what should be included in the local partnership program going forward. And pause for a minute to see if there's any comments or questions. Seeing none, next Lashar will lead us to a lively discussion about the guidelines.
Okay, so in the LPP program, we have two sets of guidelines. One is for the formulaic and one is for the competitive. We know in meetings like this, it can be easy to confuse the two. So we're going to split up the conversation and we're only going to talk about one program at a time. So if you're an agency that does not qualify for the formulaic program, you have permission to check your email now, but only for the next 5 minutes. because we are going to switch over to the competitive program and hopefully have a lively discussion on that one too. So don't go far. Okay, so we should be on slide 16, please. There we go. Okay, so the first issue is the SB1 Competitive Programs Transportation Equity Supplement. So this one is not unique to the local partnership program. This one is, it's a separate supplement document that Naveen Habib is facilitating the discussion and the update on. And we wanted to find a way to incorporate some of these elements into the formulaic program. So right now, the Transportation Equity Supplement is focused on the competitive programs. It is a selection criteria in those programs. And we're looking for ways to find, to incorporate it into the formulaic program. We did start the discussion last time, and that's what Benjamin was kind of recapping us on. We had some real brief ideas that came out of that discussion. And we wanted to bring it up again in today's workshop after people have had a little bit of time to mull it over, see if any other ideas have come up, and see if there's any other new ideas. Some of the stuff that we talked about last time included maybe requesting a paragraph in the nomination package describing the public outreach efforts in more detail. Another idea discussed was to require an attachment of documents like Ben was talking about earlier. One idea was attach the RTP or some other documentation that's already being collected and put together by agencies. The point here is not to give you guys more work, but the point is to be able to give you credit for the work that you're already doing. So now that you've had a little bit of time to kind of think about it, I want to invite comments, discussion. You can raise your hand and we'll unmute you, or you can put it into the Q&A. And I'm hoping that we can get some feedback from you all. So keep in mind that if we don't get any feedback or comments or questions or discussion, the assumption is that everything is good and that we don't need to make any changes or edits to the guidelines as they exist right now. And for the local partnership program, where this year in the 2024 cycle, we're really not recommending big sweeping changes because we are going into the 4th and 5th cycles. And we've not received a lot of feedback on, suggested changes. And so we're feeling like we've got a pretty solid set of guidelines at this point. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions or comments. So let's move on to the next one. So, oh, not the next slide, sorry, just the next topic on this slide. So guidelines, language clarification. We're curious about the formulaic program, if there's any criterion that needs to be more robust or anything that needs to be a little more flexible. I use the word criterion in the slide here, but it could just be guidelines. If there's anything in particular within the guidelines that you have found challenging trying to implement your projects, if there's any issues at all, we are interested to hear about that. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions come in. Oh, we have one question. Yay. Okay, let's get us going. Celeste?
Oh, am I doing Q&A?
Yes, please.
Okay. As a transit agency, LPPF funds are often used for facilitating projects. How should community engagement be incorporated into these projects when they are just necessary to support public-facing transit service?
For facilities projects. So I'm assuming that you are wanting to use these funds to update or to build basic infrastructure. And for basically all projects, all transportation projects these days, especially when you're using public funds, there needs to be some sort of public engagement process. The extent of that is going to be dependent on, the size of the project, the type of the project. And so we are, especially for the formulaic program, looking to you for ideas and recommendations on what would be the best way to incorporate public engagement. We know that it's important, but we want to find the best way to capture that.
All right, I don't see any further Q&A questions.
Okay. Okay, and then the last one would be technical updates. And this one might be something that you want to think about. You may not have anything in mind right now, and that's fine. You can always email us later. Again, we're pretty happy with our guidelines as they are. As we are going through and looking at our guidelines ourselves, we're putting together our red line, and that's going to be more of the technical updates of things that we might be required to put in, or that we need to update the language to avoid confusion. So we are going to be incorporating some technical updates like that. Okay, next slide, please.
I feel this slide fits very well with the first question we were asked about eligible taxing authorities. So one technical change that we are making to the local partnership formulaic guidelines will be an updated version of Appendix A, which lists the taxing authorities eligible to receive formulaic funding. So in the current 2022 formulaic guidelines, only the names of the eligible agencies are listed under Appendix A. In the proposed 2024 formulaic guidelines, we have updated Appendix A to provide more clarity on the voter-approved tax measures that we have on file for each eligible agency. And so the 2024 guidelines will include a table that features the name of the eligible agency, the ballot measure or measures that establish eligibility for the formulaic program, and the expiration date for those measures if there is one. And for the 2024 cycle, this will assist agencies in keeping track of the measures that they are being credited for in the formulaic distribution calculation, and we hope prompt agencies to alert commission staff if it needs to be updated, for example, when a new measure is passed. And what, if any, additions or changes should be made to Appendix A to improve clarity? I'll just wait a minute for any responses. Seeing none at the moment, we'll go on to the next slide and answer any questions if they come up as they come up. Thank you.
Okay, so moving on to the competitive program. I'm hoping that we can get more discussion going on this side of the LPP as well. I'll go ahead and move it to the next slide, please. So the first question that I have for you all, we did bring up at the last workshop. We didn't have a lot of discussion. I wanted to bring it up again and give you some alternative scenarios to consider. Right now, the maximum award for the competitive side is $25 million. And the question for you all is that the right amount? We do have inflation. We are seeing a lot of projects coming back asking for additional funds, which on the competitive side, we cannot do. We cannot add extra funding. And so one thing to consider, if we adjust that dollar amount with alternative one, for example, if we move it up to 40 million per project, then that means we only have enough money to fund 4.5 projects. If we drop it down to $15 million per project, then we're able to fund 12 projects, roughly, give or take. So that's just an idea to give you something to think about. And as you're thinking about whether or not that works for your projects, I did want to give you a little bit of background on the 25 million. So with the constraints put on funding and the inflation that's affecting everyone's projects, we wanted to open this discussion for this cycle about the maximum award amounts and also the minimum award amounts. So the competitive program does have a minimum of $5 million for agencies that have imposed fees and a maximum award of 25 million for everyone. So if you go back to the guidelines from 2022, it talks about how the competitive program is divided into two parts. One part is for taxing authorities with voter-approved taxes, tolls, or fees. And then the second part is for applicants with only imposed fees. And the competitive program will be divided into those two groups based on relative tax, toll, and fee revenue of the applicants. And in no case will the portion for applicants with only imposed fees be less than 5 million. So for the larger agencies, they tend to be the ones that are able to get the voter approved tax, tolls, and fees approved by the public. And a lot of the smaller agencies, they struggle with that a little bit more. And so we do have this option for an imposed fee, like the uniform developer fees that we were talking about earlier. And we separate those out so that the folks that only have the imposed fees will get a minimum of $5 million for their projects. Do we have any input at all from anyone that's with us today at the workshop on those dollar amounts? And do you support that? Do you agree with that? Do you have any concerns about any of that? Okay, it looks like we do have one question.
Yes, from Jess Manzi. How oversubscribed were the previous rounds?
So in the last cycle, we had 37 applications and we were able to award 11 projects. Cycles before that, I don't know off the top of my head because I was not directly involved with those particular cycles. Matthew, you might have some input on that.
I'd say generally the ask is, yeah, about 2.5 to 3 times the amount that we have the program. So we're usually about 3 times over subscribed. So by reducing the cap amount to maybe like 15 million or 20 million, it would allow us to fund more projects. However, applicants would be constrained to lower requests.
Lashara, we do have a raised hand.
Oh, okay, let's go with it.
All right, Carl Anderson, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you.
Thank you. Thanks, Lashara. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone, for putting this on. Carl Anderson with MTC. I would say we just have to be cautious of characterizing that an increase in the amount would mean that we're only going to fund 4.5 projects, because not every project or not every grant award is that full 25 million or would be that full 40 million. And I also would say that seeing that this is like the first time we're hearing about this, I'd be cautious of decreasing it right now because of project sponsors using LPP or LPP formula as a part of their potential funding plans to compete in other programs. It might mess with a few folks algebra as they're working towards figuring out the funding plan and across all the various competitive programs. So I think if we're potentially going to change the cap, we can preview it now in this cycle of LPP and say it's going to be something that we'll discuss for the next cycle. I'll leave my comments there.
Those are great comments. Thank you, Carl. And yeah, I didn't want to imply that 4.5 projects would be the only. You're right. That would be if everyone was asking for the 25 million. We do have an average, well, I shouldn't say an average, but we do have a spread of requests in the competitive program. We had some requests as low as 2 million. We had others as large as, of course, the maximum 25 million. And the ones that we awarded are actually a good spread of all of the above. I'd have to go back and look at the program of projects, but you can do that also. By the way, it is available on our website if you wanted to look at what we awarded in cycle 3 in the competitive program. And you can see what the dollar amounts are and what the overall project cost is. The competitive, the LPP competitive, is meant to be that final piece of funding that gets the project to the finish line. And so the ask tends to be whatever that project is missing. It looks like we have some more questions. Celeste, would you like to lead us in the next one?
Yes, so there are about 4 questions.
Okay.
Denise Sifford, was there an average request amount last cycle?
So I can't say that there's an average amount. Like I was just saying, it ranges anywhere from 2 million up to 25 million, depending on what the project needs were. Yeah, it was a good spread.
Okay, and then Michelle Smith, will funds be able to be used for cost increase?
Not on the competitive program. What you asked for in your initial application is all that you're going to be able to access from the competitive program. Any cost increases will have to be funded by local funds or another funding source.
All right, and then Sarkis Kachek says SB CAG supports the status quo of $25 maximum.
Okay, 25 million.
Okay, and then Vincenzo Carraza, is there a tier or grouping of competitive projects, or is it a free for all? Like small cities compete with big cities, max 25 million may work for large cities, but might be too much for small cities.
So this is where we separate out the smaller agencies that have imposed fees only. We don't, when we are looking at the applications and evaluating those, we do not separate them based on the size of the agency that submitted the application, unless they are imposed fee only. So we do separate those out, but otherwise everything is evaluated the same. And in the final round of evaluation, when we're looking at which ones are floated to the top and which ones can we fund and which ones can we not, because we're out of money. We do look at things like, the north-south split, the rural-urban. We do try to make sure that we have a good spread in that final list that we decide to fund. Okay, one more question.
It's actually going to be just a comment. Jess says they agree with Carl's recommendation to maintain current funding max of 25 million with the option to adjust next cycle.
Okay. So it sounds like so far we're getting a lot of support for the status quo, maintaining 25 million. Something to think about though for next cycle, which will be in 2 years. Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next one, expanding what system preservation means. Sorry, not the next slide, just the next discussion topic. We talked about this in our workshop number 1, system preservation. And we did get some ideas coming up, a little bit of discussion on this, and we just wanted to bring it back around just one more time before we close this topic out. The idea is that preserving the transportation system is not unique to your pavement index. And in a lot of engineers' minds, that's what system preservation has traditionally meant. But because this program is focused on transit, zero emission vehicles, zero emission infrastructure, we've had to expand our idea of what a transportation system is and look at the complete streets element, look at the accessibility, look at the active transportation elements, and to incorporate all of those into our definition of what the transportation system is, and whether the project we're evaluating preserves that, enhances that, or takes away from that. So I just wanted to bring it up one last time before we don't revisit it again, and see if there are any questions or comments about that. All right, seeing none, let's move on to guidelines language clarification. This was something that you might want to email us about, but we do want to hear from you. So if you have, in the process of trying to implement your project, and you went back to our guidelines and you were super confused by whatever we had said, we want to know that. So clarification, we want everything to be really clear, transparent, straightforward. So if there's anything like that that you caught, please let us know so that we can go back and look at it. Okay, pro-housing. Pro-housing was new this last cycle, and we are wondering, for those of you that were applying, whether you awarded or not, did that affect your project nomination? Did it affect the project that you chose to nominate? Did it affect the way that you wrote your application? Or did it not affect it at all? Is this something that your agency is considering? Is it on your radar at all? It is not going away for cycle 4 of the competitive program. We are keeping that in, and we're just looking at how we want to use it, if we want to update it, if we're happy with the way that it is right now. So open the discussion for that one. Okay, I don't see anybody jumping at at the opportunity there. So we'll move on to community engagement. Again, similar to pro-housing, and you will again have an opportunity to talk about this with the transportation equity supplement and the equity advisory committee. So they are also looking at this one, and there is just a reminder that Naveen will be hosting the Transportation Equity Supplement workshop on March 27 from 1 to 4 o'clock. And we highly encourage you to attend and be part of that conversation. I believe the registration link is available now on our website. And so any comments that you might have regarding that will directly impact, if you go to that workshop and you participate there and you comment there, that will directly impact the LPP competitive guidelines as well. All the SB1 programs, actually. But I wanted to give you just a brief opportunity here to express any thoughts or concerns that you might have. Okay, looks like we have one question coming up.
Yes, it's actually going to be a comment on pro-housing. It is a factor in our consideration of what to submit, but not one of the primary ones.
Okay, that's good feedback. Thank you for that. Okay, the last one, the guidelines clarification. Like the formulaic program, we're just looking for any ideas that you might have, if there are criterion that you think need to be more robust, or if you found them to be stifling, you need more flexibility. We would like to know if you have any kind of issues whatsoever, because like I said before, if we don't hear feedback, we think everything's cool. We're not making any changes. So we're just going to keep it moving forward.
Lashar, we
Okay.
actually have a question going back to housing.
Okay.
It says, as a transit agency, we don't have housing criteria. Is CTC planning to change or alter this criteria?
As a transit agency, so you're right. So transit agencies don't have the jurisdiction to get the pro housing, but you can work with a jurisdiction that does have that. And a lot of agencies will partner with with the larger jurisdictions, with the city or the county or the COG, for example. Excuse me, and those partnerships are helpful. And a lot of times when you have partnerships like that, it helps to show the regional significance of your transit project. So if a city or a county, for example, has a transit-oriented development that they're putting in, like that's a great example of a regionally significant transportation project that partners a transit agency with a city or a county and the COG. So it depends on the project, and the pro housing that would fit right in with that kind of a project. You sometimes have to be a little more creative or look at the particular project that you are putting forward for this program and look at the criteria that we use in order to decide if your project is going to be competitive based on our guidelines. Okay, do we have any other questions or comments on any of these discussion topics?
Yes, we do have another comment.
Okay.
If there's any room for added flexibility on utilizing LPP competitive cost savings, that would be great. It seemed like it was going to be pretty tricky to turn around in the quick time frame laid out in the guidelines when looking at the guidelines for our LPP competitive project.
Okay. So we'll have to take that back and take note of that and look back at that one. I haven't heard that before, so thank you for that comment. I really appreciate that. I don't know, Matthew, do you have any comments about that at all? I think the time frame
Yeah,
go ahead.
I think right now our policy on how to utilize cost savings will remain consistent with the other SB1 competitive programs as well. We understand it's tricky to turn it around. However, we have to, I'm assuming, unless you want to unmute yourself, Martha, and chat with us about it, I'm assuming you mean potentially use that cost savings on additional scope or on alternate scope. And right now, because of the way that we understand projects are awarded, it's typically the entire defined scope, and you can only add scope, via change order if the contract has already been awarded. I think our current guidelines actually allow that, if there is a savings, like let's say the bids come back much lower than what the engineer's estimate was at, and scope can be added prior to contract award. Our guidelines already allow for the flexibility to utilize that savings on that expanded scope. But otherwise, no, that the savings on the competitive program cannot be utilized on a different project or after contract award.
Yeah, a great example of that is a sound wall project that we had from one of the previous cycles. They finished up, they had cost savings, and they were able to apply those cost savings to add just a little more of their sound wall. So they were able to extend it. And that was a great win for the city. It was a small little agency, so it was perfect. Okay, but we will take that back and consider that some more also. Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments. Let's go ahead and move on. But if you do have any questions or comments that come up as we continue our discussion, please don't hesitate, raise your hand or pop that into the Q&A. Okay, next slide, please. So we did want to get into some frequently asked questions that have come up as we've been administering projects from the last cycles. Go ahead and bring us to the next slide, please. So one question I hear a lot is, can we shift program funds to a different year? And the answer is going to be different depending on if you're talking about formulaic or competitive funds. For the formulaic program funds can be applied to pre-construction. So if you're still in project development, you can use your formula funds there. And then you are able to shift your program funds if you need to. There are guidelines as to which year you can transfer to. But sometimes that allows agencies to, for example, in a 2-year program, save up your year 1 funds and combine it with your year 2 funds, and then you're able to do a little bit more with those funds. But you won't be able to program them outside of that program cycle. For the competitive, no, you are not able to program outside of the year that was identified when you were awarded those funds. You can, however, get a time extension. So if you are coming up on the date when you thought that you were going to be able to go to construction and you're not able to for whatever reason, and we do have guidelines on what criteria have to be met, but you can then submit for a time extension. And we have, well, there's different phases, right, of construction. So we do have different guidelines. For most of them, it's roughly 12 months. Yeah, so let me know if you have any questions about that one. The next Q&A we have is, we have a project delay. Oh, wait, sorry. I just did that one. The next one, bids are higher than our engineer's estimate. Can we seek supplemental funds? And for the competitive program, like we just said, no, you cannot. You do need to use local funds. For the formulaic program, yes, but there are guidelines as to how you do that. I did go back into the 2022 guidelines and pulled those out so that I could share those with you today. And what the guidelines are saying is that a taxing authority may nominate an existing program project for supplemental funding if the project was allocated formulaic funding and the supplemental funding is programmed to the same project phase. So you can't add extra supplemental funding to a different phase later and call it supplemental funding. Supplemental funding requests for pre-construction phases may be considered up to 6 months prior to the expenditure deadline. And for construction, they must be programmed and allocated prior to the contract award. Reminder, this is for the formula program only. And the supplemental funding may be, you may use the formulaic funds to replace local funding already committed to the project, subject to the required match. So there is a 1-to-1 match in the formula program. And if you exceed that 1-to-1 match and you want to replace some of those local funds, you can do that. Okay, eligibility questions. We do have if you have a general use tax toll or fee, and the transportation is one of many areas that the funds go, we are often asked, does that qualify my agency for the LPP program? And the question is, for the formulaic program, if you have a voter approved, a general use tax that distributes funds to lots of different places, maybe you've got some money going to water, you've got some money going to parks, you've got some money going to transportation, you've got some money going to the police. That voter approved initiative is not eligible, and it does not make the agency eligible for the LPP program. So you have to have a voter approved initiative that is exclusive to transportation. And that is also true for the competitive program. But if an agency has a developer use fee, then that does qualify you for the competitive program, but not for the formulaic. Okay, so those are some of the FAQs. Do we have any other frequently asked questions that you think might benefit the group as a whole? Okay, don't hesitate to ask if something comes up. Next slide, please. All right, Ben, you want to talk about the office hours?
I'll always love to talk about office hours. So if you haven't already scheduled your office hours yet, please do as soon as possible, or please do so as soon as possible. The Local Partnership Program, the Trade Corridors Enhancement Program, and the Solution for Congested Corridors programs are all holding office hours March through May. And we've already had several meetings with the agencies, and they've proven to be very valuable. And the purpose of these office hours sessions is to discuss technical questions regarding proposed projects, and these will not be used to discuss guidelines development, and staff will not provide special or specific feedback on applications. And sessions will be scheduled on a first come, first served basis. And that covers office hours. So next slide, please.
So next slide, please. Okay, so moving forward, looking at the next workshops, we are looking for input from you on things that you want to talk about. And on the next slide, it's just a blank slate. So we thought we'd give you guys a couple minutes to just brainstorm ideas. If you have any ideas that might be helpful for a future discussion for workshop number 3, now would be a good time to just throw it out there. And we'll go ahead and type it in if anybody has any ideas at all. You can unmute. There we go. Okay, Leanne, are we getting any questions or comments?
I am not seeing anything come in yet.
Okay, so we can go back to the slideshow, and if anything does come up, go ahead and email Ben or I, and we will take note of that and bring it to our next workshop. Okay, we're going to finish a little bit early. We're almost done here. So next slide, please. Okay, so this is for the overall SB1 program, and this is just a quick recap reminder. Many of you might have seen this slide before. I just wanted to bring this up so that we are all on the same page. The next funding cycle for all of the SB1 competitive programs is a 2-year program period. It's for fiscal years 25-26 and 26-27. So if your project is looking like it might not be ready till the end of fiscal year 26-27, you might want to hold off and wait till the next cycle, because we are moving to the 2-year program periods, and the next cycle will be starting before you know it. If you're ready to go and you're shovel ready, then go ahead and get your application in. Additional changes to all of the guidelines. We are trying to incorporate that community engagement and get more equitable outcomes. We've made some progress so far, and we feel like there's a room for more progress. So we're going to continue working on that, and Naveen is the lead for that. And we're also going to start considering workforce development. That is new to us, and we are grappling with how we're going to incorporate that, as well as we're going to continue including the medium-term cap-tie strategies for all of the SB1 programs, and then of course reinforcing the statutory and program requirements as always. Next slide, please. Okay, so our next workshop for the LPP is going to be, oops, I forgot to update the slide here. Sorry, it's not early April 9th. It's going to be on April 9th from 2:30 to 4, which is maybe late April 9th. Watch for the registration announcement. We do have the date identified. I don't think that we've sent out the save the date, but we will be doing that here very soon. And the next slide. Okay, so these are our contact information. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. There is a lot of information available on our website. You can find that there. And I hope you all have a really wonderful day. And I'm giving back another 30 minutes back to you. And thank you so much for attending today.